Hello, I'm Full Paragon, and this is your guide to the Dark Wyvern EX Arena for July 2022. Unlike the last arena, which was quite the ordeal, this one should be fairly easy as it is a magic bonus EX arena. The boss will seal your characters and buff its own defense. To get around this, I recommend using Whiz for her agility down, which will make sure that there are gaps in the buff and keep you from getting sealed constantly. This boss does favor hitting the first character, so that is where you should put Whiz or Darkness if you're really struggling. The boss deals a mix of physical and magic damage, so having buffs against both of those will be helpful. In the first slot, Whiz is the natural choice. She's just the best tank for mages with her personal weapon that has damage absorption and the self-heal that she has. Christmas Whiz is obviously the best option, but any Whiz will work. If you don't have her, I'd say Summer Whiz is a good choice, and then after her, any of the 3-star welfare Whizzes will work. For best results, pair Whiz with someone who has an agility buff to increase the rate at which she's able to heal herself. Make sure you're using her ult 1.5 to slow the boss down and help Whiz keep herself and the rest of her team alive. Rin is currently my pick for the best DPS mage, whether we're talking about Maid Rin, who's by far the best mage after Christmas Whiz, or even Welfare Dark Rin with her self-agility buff and attack debuff on the buffs. Both of them are absolutely incredible. They'll deal a lot of damage, and they can help keep your team alive either by charging ultimate or by debuffing the boss's attack. Don't use the Dark ult here even if you're using Dark Rin. Instead, use her ult 1.5 as the magic damage buff to your team, and more self-agility buff is going to be a lot more useful. If you're not even using either of those and you have Rin's personal weapon, I'd suggest using a Wind Rin. Otherwise, any of her 4-star versions or Welfare Fire Rin are good choices here as they have decent buffs or debuffs to be using on the boss. It is viable to run the Megumeme here. You can definitely run her with either Railgun or with Explosion, but to run the Railgun, you pretty much have to have a double gauge boost team. So that's Christmas Whiz and Maid Rin or Arabian Amy. ReZero Megamine is really the best option, but any Megamine will work aside from Pajama Megamine, as her kit is just pretty awful. Using Explosion, you can get away with only a single gauge boost, but it won't deal quite as much damage, and ReZero Megamine is great to use here mostly because of the early buffs, which will get your team through until they're able to start using their ultimates to get better buffs. Union is also a very strong option, with Halloween Union being great as always. She provides damage, and of course that agility buff for your team. School Union is also pretty great here, as she has a very strong kit damage-wise, but in both those cases, make sure you're using Union's ult 1.5, as you would prefer the team magic damage buff over the increased damage on her lightning buff. Since the boss is not weak to lightning, it is sort of a wash there. Any Union will work realistically to provide that buff, but I think the 4 stars are, generally speaking, just a little bit stronger, but using a Welfare Union, you can still get a pretty decent score. The last DPS mage that you can use is Aru. I think that Summer Aru, when she comes out, will be really good, but that won't be till nearly the end of this, so I would stick with either original Aru or RP Aru. If you have her personal weapon, the dark cards are going to win out, just because of how much it buffs dark damage, but any Aru will work in the last slot. She's mostly here for the burst damage that she deals right at the end. Our healing roster hasn't really changed since the last time we saw Dark Wyvern, so I would recommend pretty much the same healers. El Silo, Amelia, Arabian Amy, and Cafe Celia are the only ones that I would really call good. If you don't have any of those, you can sort of get away with using Maid Silo, Maid Amy, or even the new PJ Silo, but they're just not as good as these four, and for the most part, I don't recommend using a off-brand healer simply because they're not going to help your score out very much, as your score is based purely on damage, and healers just can't dish out as much of that as the other options. Komeko is here, but she's bad. Don't bother. For maximizing your score, I think a railgun-based team is probably your best option. I would set up with Christmas Whiz in the front, with ReZero Megamine and Maid Rin. After that, I think Halloween Union is going to be the best one to come in once Megumin blows herself up, and if someone does happen to die, Arabian Amy is perhaps the best healing choice. You can make a few substitutions here. Amy could be El Silo or Amelia for similar results, and Union could be swapped if Aru if you want, but I think overall the basic structure of this team will remain the same. As far as welfare options go, I'd run something like this. If you are running a welfare team, my suggestion is that you don't try and run Megumin, as you don't have the ult gauge up that would make her work. I think that Ninja Whiz is probably going to be your best welfare option as far as tanks go. As far as Dark Rin is concerned, frankly, she's really good whether or not you're running a welfare team, and if you're not running Maid Rin, she's the go-to option here as she's got an incredible kit. Any Union or Aru will work fairly well in the later slots on your team, just make sure you're using the appropriate ults for the buffs. For healers, I would probably use Arabian Silo as my first 3-star options, but other choices like Amy or perhaps one of the better Cecilies will work out fairly well here. Overall, I think that you can still get a pretty good score using an all-welfare team. The biggest hang-up here will be if you can keep your team alive long enough to max out that score. That's the video, thanks for watching. Tune in next time to learn more about Kameko and where she does or does not fit in the meta.